It's Wednesday, Adams here. Today we are here to talk about all the books that I ended up reading for October. Now, technically, we're going to talk about 25 books, but in reality, I actually only read 15 books this month. That is a lot of books, but for me personally, that is the lowest amount of books I've read in a month since I've started this channel. And honestly, it is something that I am working on, is kind of lessening the load, because it is a mental wellness thing of I read so that it's never silent. Like, I'm always either physically reading or I have headphones in and I'm listening to an audiobook, because I don't like silence. I don't like thinking like about the future. I don't like thinking about stuff. So I just always want there to be a story going on. And if I'm at work and I don't have a story in my head, I'm telling people about what I'm reading, because I like telling stories. I like hearing stories. And it's gotten to the point where I'm reading so much that I'm forgetting a lot of things that I read in January and February, or I'm forgetting things that I read even in the same month. I really need to take a step back, because it's just gotten to the point where it's obnoxious. If it's a 2-star or even like a 3-star, then I don't care about remembering it. I'm gonna move on and go to a new book fast as possible. And I'm not really gonna talk about it in reviews or wrap-ups or whatever, or even in Indie of the Year content, because I didn't care about the book. But if I'm giving it 3.5 stars, 4 stars, or God forbid 5 stars, I damn well better be sitting on that book and thinking about how much I like it and talking about it with you guys and having a lengthy discussion. So that was just a little something that has been going through my head a lot in like the last 2 months. And I don't know, I just wanted to get that out there. So the reason that it's only 15 books this month is because 10 of the books were actually books I read last month, but the video for them did not come out until this month. I was binging the Tokyo Ghoul series. This is about our boy, Ken Kaneki, and he thinks he's so lucky because this girl that he thinks is so hot and he saw at this coffee shop asked him out on a date. And he's like, what? Oh my God, okay, yes. He goes on a date with her. She is not interested in his mind. She is interested in his body. And I don't mean sexually. I mean, she wants to eat him. Okay, so you might have noticed the word ghoul is in here. So basically we're following a human world and a ghoul world that run alongside each other, but the ghouls try to remain a little bit more anonymous, but they have to survive on human meat. And he is going on a date with a ghoul, and she tries to kill him, and in a hilarious, like literally it was so ridiculous, the way that he gets out of it from dying. He is almost crushed to death, and he gets taken to the hospital, and so does she. She's dead on arrival, and a surgeon decides to transplant the organs of his that are dying or have failed with her organs. And this makes him into the first ever half human, half ghoul hybrid. And he has things that he has from his past human life, things that he has from his new ghoul life, where he doesn't understand how to live. He doesn't want to eat human meat. And he goes to this coffee shop that is run by ghouls, and they're trying to help him out in surviving and figuring out like the underbelly of this ghoul world. While you're also following ghouls and humans, you're also following a group of people called doves, and they are the investigators who are trying to hunt down and kill these ghouls. I did not care about that. For me, it was very boring. It was very tedious. There's so many characters. Oh my God, are there so many characters? I didn't want to hear about that. I didn't want to talk about that. I wanted to talk about ghouls. I wanted to talk about ghouls eating humans. I wanted to talk about him, but it's not bad. The first 2 volumes I gave 4 stars, and then 3 through 9 I gave 3 stars because I really liked it, but not enough to keep going, and not as much or nearly as much as I enjoyed the beginning. And in the same reading vlog, I picked up All of Us Villains as a reread because I gave it 5 stars at the end of last year. I don't know what was happening in 2021, but 2022 has seen the light. I gave this 2 stars. What was I talking about? I gave this 5? I guess 5 stars? Like, who was I then? Because I don't know her. I don't recognize her. I would make fun of her, to be honest. Like, who was I? This is about this world where 7 magical families, every generation, they pick out one of their kids to be the champion who has to battle for high magic. And high magic is like the most sought after thing in the world. And the only way to get it is to compete in this championship, and if you win, then that family gets high magic for the next generation. The first half of this book is really good, in my opinion. And the first half of this book, I was like, this could be 4 stars. It's like 4 stars, okay. It's not exactly what I thought, but it's still good. The second half of this book is cringe city. Oh my God. The amount of teenage angst, the amount of angsty heartbreak, like, is absurd that happens in this book. They know damn well that they're supposed to be killing each other. They knew it. They knew it from the second they were born. They knew that this was going to fucking happen. But instead of killing each other, they are falling in love within 5 seconds of entering this arena. And there's like barely any death that happens in this book. Like, it's very disappointing. The way that they were so immature. Like, it was that kind of like, oh my God, like, I would never do that. I'm evil. But then like simping. But it's not horrible. It's not horrible. I gave it 2 stars. But I would not recommend, and I am not continuing with the series. And next, I listened to the audiobook of Chasing the Boogeyman by Richard Chismar. I ended up giving it 3 stars. This is another like true crime story / horror story. So this is about Richard Chismar, which is the main character, and it's loosely based on things that actually happened to him in his hometown of Edgewood, Maryland. So the true crime story that happened to him is that there was a guy who was sneaking into people's houses at night or into women's houses, and was touching their hair, like brushing their hair, like touching their arms and legs while they were sleeping. And when they would wake up, he would haul ass out of there. And it was happening a lot and really scaring people. And what once was like a really quiet suburban town, everybody was getting like deadbolts and guns and like neighborhood watches and stuff. And it became like a very quick flip of, you know, you thought it was just like a sweet, quiet town. And then it's like, no, somebody here's crazy. Like, oh my God, like we're in danger. So that is what he was basing this story on. But this story is about Richard Chismar. In the past, there was a series of girls, teenage girls, that were going missing, and they were being found like mutilated. Like, the things that were happening to these girls were so... Here's what I found. I don't want to know what you found. Oh my God, that literally scared me. Like, I thought it was going to show photos. Anyway. Oh Lord, oh my God, I was like cold sweat. I was like, don't. Anyway. Sorry about that little break-in. Richard Chismar, who comes back to his hometown, and they've put a curfew set and everything, and he wants to be a writer, and he takes it upon himself to like start writing about this story, and he's writing about it over like years and years and years and trying to like gather evidence and stuff. Now, the thing about that made me want to lower the rating is that there is a female journalist in the town who is the one who wants to write about this. And he's telling her, no, don't do it. Like, you know, that's messy. Like, don't get involved in this. It's not really that big a deal or whatever. Like, he's saying, don't do it. But then he like steals her idea basically and is like, becomes like, I don't know. I was just like, that's not cool. Like, why? But this happens in so many of these kind of stories. Like, it happened in True Crime Story. It happens in True Crime Addict, where they're like, no, nobody is going to care about that. And then behind the scenes, they go and start telling the story. Like, what are these men doing? Well, one thing I'll say that I really, really loved is there's a story that a cop tells about finding a house of mannequins. I had goosebumps. I had to stop the audiobook. I was genuinely scared. Like, that was so creepy. Oh my God, that was so good. And now that story alone makes me want to give it 3.5 stars. I might give it 3.5 stars. But something that makes me not want to give it 3.5 stars is at the ending. I'm sorry, who did it? I could never have guessed who did it because it was not set up. It wasn't just not set up properly. It wasn't set up at all. I was like, who are you even talking about? Oh, that person? Okay, the person who got like 5 pages of screen time the entire book, and 3 of that was a confessional. Like, I'm sorry. I didn't like the ending, but there are a lot of things I did like about this book. I would still suggest it, but it's not great. And then I read Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney, and I cannot believe I am here to tell you that I really enjoyed this book. Katie Colson, here to tell you, I'm sorry, Wednesday Addams. Hello? Wednesday Addams here to tell you that I liked an Alice Feeney book. I truly never thought I'd see the day. I truly never thought the day would finally arrive and that I would love it this much. I gave it 4 stars. 4 stars, but I loved it. But you know, sometimes she goes a little too far. Well, not sometimes, all the time she's going a little too far. But this book, stunning. I have not read all of the And Then There Were None retellings in my life. I have not. But I can tell you that I've read a lot of them, and this is the only one that has nailed it. This is the only one that is done like right in my eyes to Agatha Christie, because all the other ones, like maybe they'll have people that are getting picked off one by one, maybe even it's on a secluded island, but it's missing the 2 most prominent things, in my opinion, and Then There Were None, one of which is the creepy as shit poem. That creepy poem. And in Daisy Darker, there's the poem, and it's longer than it is in And Then There Were None, and it's more specific. It's so entertaining. It makes sense because like the grandmother writes children's stories, so like, and she writes poetry, so all that like ties in. It isn't just a random poem. And then the second thing is that every single character, everybody on the island needs to have some secret in their past that makes it make sense why they're there. And she nailed it. She nailed it. Everybody had secrets. Everybody was hiding shit. And it was so entertaining. So you were following a family called the Darkers, and their grandma lives on this like secluded island. And the family has been pretty much estranged for a while. And they're very dysfunctional. Like, very dysfunctional. Like, oh my gosh. You just wanted to like beat some of these sisters over the head. They're so frustrating. But, and the mom too, to be honest. Anyway, so it's the Nana's 80th birthday, and she wants all of them to come together because she was told by a fortune teller when she was younger that she would die when she was 80. So she's turning 80 and she's like, this is it. This is like my last birthday. You need to come and say goodbye to me. And she's going to tell them her will. Okay. Well, the tide, when it comes up, they are held on the island without any ability to leave for 8 hours until the tide goes back out again. When the tide comes up, Granny dies. Granny is found deceased, and then slowly and surely, each member of the family starts getting picked off one by one, according to this creepy ass poem that she wrote. It's so good. But also, the ending was a bit much. But then again, the ending of And Then There Were None is a bit much. It's a bit much. So I guess that checks out. But yeah, I gave it 4 stars. I highly recommend. And then I listened to We Spread by Ian Reid. It's his newest release. I don't know what to think, so I definitely don't know what to say. What happened in this book? What happened? I don't get it. I did not rate this on Goodreads. I did not rate it. I had such a strange time reading this, and I truly, like, I don't really even know how to summarize it. I'm going to do my best. You're following this lady named Penny, and her longtime partner had passed away a couple years before, and without her knowing it, he had made provisions on what was going to happen to her when, you know, she became too old to take care of herself, is basically what they're saying. And she has a couple incidents, and she ends up getting moved into this retirement facility that she didn't want and didn't ask for. And at first, you know, she's putting a fight against it because she likes her autonomy and she can't live alone anymore. So she goes there, and at first everything seems great. She starts painting again, and she makes friends, and there's all this cool stuff, cool. And then things are getting a little nefarious, and it's like, is she just suspicious? Is she paranoid? Or should she be paranoid? Should she be suspicious? Is she going senile? Like, is it senility, or is something actually going on? Because you as the reader cannot trust Penny and her mind, because she is slowly going through dementia. Losing like mental agility and like losing your mind is really fucking scary to me, like really scary, so scary. And it's like, I know it is for everybody, but that was just something that like, oh God, it was just freaking me out reading that. So I kept disconnecting, because obviously the whole like, oh, is this old age or is it a horror story? I kept reading it like trying to make it a horror story, where obviously, you know, you can read it any which way you want. Ian Reid is very famous for that, but I wanted it to be a horror story, but like I could not get my brain to process this book. And even talking about it right now, I'm like, I sound crazy. Anyway, let's move on. And then I finished the bind-up edition of Watakoi. This is volumes 3 and 4. I ended up giving this 4 stars. I know I've talked about this before, so I'll try to keep it brief. This is following 3 different couples, and they're all huge nerds in some which way or the other. Like, one of them is a huge gamer, one of them is obsessed with boy love romance, one of them's a huge manga reader, and the other one is a cosplayer. These two, I'm obsessed. These are my babies. I love them. They're so cute. And in this one, we get their backstory of how they met and like how they ended up getting together. I loved it. I gave it 4 stars because, again, there were some things that needed some work. And also, this is told by like jumping around to things, and it's very hard to keep track of the story. I swear, you'll go from like them talking at the bar about something, and then you'll go to like, oh, the next week they're at an anime convention, and then you go back to the bar. And I'm like, what are we doing? I mean, I still love it though. I better finish the whole series. My plan is to finish the whole series, but 4 stars. And then I did a reread of The Promise Neverland, Volume 1. This remains a 5-star. I freaking love it. I know I've talked about this before, obviously, so I'll try to be brief, but this is set at Gracefield House, which is an orphanage, and there are kids from 0 to 12 years old, and we're following Emma, Norman, and Ray, who are the brightest kids at this orphanage, and they are being led by a woman that they refer to as Mom, and they have great food, great meals, great friends. What more could an orphan ask for, you know? Except every time a kid gets adopted, they never hear from the kid again. And they're like, that's so weird. Like, we were best friends. Like, why would they, we're family. Like, why would they not talk to me again? I just don't understand. And then we start this volume with these 3 kids finding out what's actually happening and finding out why they are never allowed to leave the house. Like, they cannot go outside and what's actually happening out there. This looks so cute, doesn't it? Like, doesn't this just look so sweet? Oh, everybody's hugging and smiling. Oh my God. And then, wham! It hits you with the right hook. What is the right hook? Murder. Cannibalism. Breeding children. And when I tell you that's the half of it, this is so good. But the manga, highly recommend. And we followed that up with a 2022 anticipated release, and that is Amari and the Great Game by B.B. Alston. Basically, you're following Amari Peters, who is president, she's CEO, she's the Speaker of the House, she's everything. She's everything. She wins every single medal. All the Olympic awards should go to Amari, even if she doesn't compete. Like, I love her so much. And she is a middle grade student, and basically in the first book, her brother has gone missing, and she's determined to find him, and she discovers this supernatural world that is coexisting with the human world, but they disguise themselves so that none of the humans will know that the supernatural world exists, because they don't want to be treated as less than, they don't want to be killed and captured, enslaved, any of those things. And that is something being said about this book, is that it is so good at talking about so many things and layering in so many conversations, because the talk of supernatural creatures and even the diversity amongst the supernatural creatures, like there's yetis and zombies and vampires and all this different stuff. The talk of that is heavily infused with xenophobia and racism and classism, and there's all of this happening, but they're calling it, oh, well, it's like the magicians. And the things that Amari has to go through in this book, in both the books, the fact that the things that she goes through, I would have been showing my absolute ass to some of these characters, but Amari handles it with tact. She tamps down that anger, and then instead she comes at them with logic and evidence and tries to actually get her point across. And I'm like, how is she doing it? How? I don't understand, but I love her, and she could teach me a thing or two. The second book we are following, where basically these people come to her and say, we want you to be the spokesperson for magicians, because the new headmaster or headmistress at her like school / job or whatever is super anti-magician, anti-black, is the vein that we're running with in the series. She's anti-magician, and she's doing everything she can to segregate Amari from everyone else and not let her do anything, and try to basically oust her and get her out so she never has to see her again. And when they come to her and say like, oh, we want you to be like the spokesperson for magician kind, she says no. She's like, I'm a kid, you know, I don't really feel comfortable doing that. I don't want to be like the warrior of the people. But when she says no, somebody else says yes, and this magician is not a good person, and he does not have good intent. He does not, you know, wish the best for the Bureau, and this is something that's really bad because it's tied to her brother, and she's like, no, if you do this, then you're going to be hurting my brother, you're going to be hurting magicians, you're going to be hurting the whole supernatural world, and I don't want that. So it starts this great game, which is basically the Knight brothers trying to decide who's going to be their successor. And she's like, I have to win because this is the only way that I can make sure that these laws don't go into place that are going to hurt everyone, including me and my family and my friends and the people I care about. Speaking of the word friends, her best friend is a weredragon. When I tell you I was tearing up so many times in this book, hearing their friendship is so good. It's so sweet. I love it. She's so loyal, and she's such a good friend. Anyway, I'm begging you, like, I do not like middle grade, and I am telling you that this is 5 stars. Here's where we're really going to be brief, and I'm not really going to say much because it's so far into the series, and I do not want to spoil things for you because I do desperately want everybody to read these, but I reread volumes 8 and 9 of Blood on the Tracks to prepare for volumes 10 and the latest release, which is volume 11. And are you kidding me? Like, look at this. It is stunning. Stunning. It's so beautiful. Like, I can't flip to anything else because it'll be a spoiler, but oh, dear Lord. Like, it's so beautiful. Okay, the only thing I'm going to say about this is that I gave them all 5 stars. Like literally volume 8 and on, there are previous volumes that I've given 3 stars and 4 stars, but this 8, oh, it pops off. Oh my God, we're rocketing into the fucking sun, okay? This shit is amazing. And these last couple volumes, like, what is happening? What is happening? All I'm gonna say is that this is like, has very much Bates Motel vibes. It's very much Bates Motel, but like if they were both freaking crazy, which they both are crazy in Bates Motel, but I mean like up it up. Ramp it up. If the mom was like, like crazy, you know what I'm saying? Something I will say is that if you can pick them up from your library, I would suggest that because these are $13 a piece in US and there's $17.50 in Canada. Wow, this is like how people must feel when I tell them how much my insulin costs. Anyway, so these are, they're not pricey for a manga, but they are pricey for the amount of story you're getting in each because these are heavily reliant on the artwork and the artwork is stunning, okay? But there's not a lot of dialogue that happens on the pages, so you can read these in like 15 minutes, 30 minutes like maximum 30 minutes. Just keep that in mind. All that being said, 5 stars. Survivor by J.F. Gonzalez. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that I only read a little over half of this book. Like, I only got this far because I couldn't do it. This is an extreme horror. I was like, I can't do it. I do not like the writing of this. So even though I wasn't like, oh my God, I'm going to throw up, I was like, I don't like the writing. And then, God bless my patron, Alyssa Jane, who is amazing, and she actually sent me this book because she was like, I want to see you read this, and I was reading it on Readings Friends, and I was annotating it. Like, it wasn't just a little annotating. Like, I was like going in. I was writing like all my thoughts, like on the pages and shit. I was having a time, is what I'll say. But thank God, I stopped reading this, and she was like, are you going to DNF it? Let me know. I said, yes, I'm going to DNF it. And she ended up sending me like 3 pages of a like Word document about what happens in the second half of this book. And she was so right. The second half of this book is so much better than the first half. Like, what are you talking about? Okay. Following Lisa and her husband as they're going on this weekend getaway because she wants to tell him that she's pregnant and she hasn't told him yet. And they end up, while they're driving there, her husband ends up getting a citizen's arrest based on the way he's driving. He gets a citizen's arrest and then Lisa gets kidnapped. But the kidnappers aren't asking for ransom. They want to make Lisa a star of a snuff film. Am I allowed to say what a snuff film is? A snuff film is a pornographic movie of a actual moida. Yeah, they get unalived in the video and it's porn. So that's what Lisa has in store for her. That's her fun little weekend getaway. Okay. And basically you are following her as she is trying to figure out how to get out of this. And the way that she goes about getting out of this is disgusting. And I got to that part. Like, I got to halfway through when she, you know, offers up a different solution to get away. And I was like, I can't read about that. I can't read about it. I can't. And I stopped. And then Alyssa was like, let me tell you what ends up happening after that. And it becomes like a thriller after that. She was like, they literally stopped talking about all the extreme shit because at this point, all it was a couple dudes just doing like gnarly, disgusting shit to women and like killing them. And it's just like, I don't care, disgusting. But then this half, I get why people give this 5 stars. I get it. Because this half, I was like, damn, I wish I'd finished reading it. But that being said, I think the writing is really bad. Like the writing, I could not get past it. The writing is so atrocious. Anyway, I didn't rate this. I'm not going to rate it, but what the fuck? And for my next physical read, I had Richard Osman's The Thursday Murder Club. Now this is a reread. I listened to the audio earlier this year and I'd given it 3.5 stars. While I remember really liking it, it wasn't fully there for me. But then when I read the second book, I gave it 5 stars. And I was sitting there thinking, I have to be wrong about one of these. I have to be not looking at this as good as it was, or looking at the second book and giving it too high of a rating. So I went back to reread and to annotate. This I really enjoyed. I ended up giving it 4 stars, but I do look back, and when I read this book, look back and think I agree with the way I felt the first time, but it is better than I had remembered. We're following 4 people in a retirement village that are pushing 80, but they still have a couple tricks up their sleeves, okay? So basically every Thursday they come together and they try to solve unsolved murders. You get me. Anyway, when someone gets, why do I keep intermittently saying unalived and murder? Just pick one. Anyway, when somebody gets murdered, I just don't want to say it like too loud because it's a triggering word. Anyway, when somebody dies on their doorstep, they are like full at the front lines. They're like, we'll solve it. We'll do this. And they are so good at what they're good at. Like, they all bring something to the table. They're so interesting. I will say I really enjoyed this. I think it's really funny. I think it's really sweet. But I will say that the first the first 3/4 I was really digging it. And then it really slows down at the last like half to a third. So I am going to give it 4 stars. I really liked it. And I'm going to hopefully in November, pick back up the second book and see if it was still 5 stars. And then I'm going to talk about my Smut Salon book club books that I read for the month of October. And I read This Thing Between Us by Gus Moreno. And there were definitely a lot of times that I really liked this book. But this was kind of another thing like in We Spread where, what? Like, I was so confused. And there were points where I was like, did I just read that? Is that what happened? And I would like flip back and be like, hold on. Did you just say what you just said? Like, what are you talking about? You're following this guy, Thiago, and his wife, Vera. The book opens with him at her funeral. But the things that led up to her dying were really creepy because she buys this thing called the Itza, which is basically like an Alexis. I'm sorry if I made any of y'all's go off when I just said that. Anyway, it's basically like, and it's the same thing, but theirs is super creepy, and it just starts like randomly talking, and it will randomly like start playing this creepy music at all times of the night, and it starts buying things and sending it to their house. Like, who ordered Industrial Lie? I don't know. Who ordered like a baseball bat and a hatchet? Like, what are we doing? Why is this happening? So that's going on, and at first it's funny, but then Vera dies, and it's really creepy, and then Itza is like talking to somebody in the middle of the night in the living room. Who's she talking to? What's happening? Oh my God. So Thiago is super fucked up because of this. Like, I mean, not just because of the Itza, but he's super fucked up. Like, his wife dying, like the grief that's depicted in this book is so beautiful in my opinion. But so he decides that he's going to get as far away as humanly possible from this Itza, from this house. So he goes from Chicago to Colorado, but quickly discovers that it isn't the house. It isn't the Itza. It's him. That this haunting, this demon, this horror, whatever, is following him. Now, this is where I got confused, is I couldn't tell if this was all a depiction of grief and if this was actually happening, or if it was a demon that was feeding on his grief. I think it's the latter. Maybe I'm not supposed to know, but at the end, I just felt very like confused and very like, what are we talking about right now? Like, which way are we going? Not totally sure, but there was a couple times where the writing was so fucking stunning. Like, there is a line I want to read you. Okay. So this is when he's at the funeral, or he's at the reception, is that what you call it, afterward, when everybody's coming up and saying like, oh my God, I'm so sorry for your loss, you know, whatever. And he says, my deepest condolences. I can't imagine how painful this must be for you. Yes, she could. They all thought they could, but they just didn't want to admit it. People cannot bear to think there are channels of human experience that are closed off to them, but they'll never know. People want to believe their experience is universal, that nothing's outside their scope, that their simulation of losing their spouse is just the same as my real loss. I could see it when I caught them looking at me, wondering how it would be for them. What they say, call me. What they mean, it's your responsibility to let me know when I have to care. Like, that writing is so good, and I need to look up Gus Moreno and read more of his work, but like, I don't know what I want to rate this book. Right now I'm thinking like 3.5 stars, but like, that feels kind of wrong. I feel like I need to give it 4, But I did feel like at the end, I was like, what the fuck is happening? I don't know. I'm going to do the live discussion with my patrons and then I'll decide what I'm going to rate it. But I would still, like, no matter what, I highly recommend. Next, I read Killers of a Certain Age by Deanna Raybourn. This was one of my most anticipated books of 2022. This, while not a bad book, was so disappointing to me. It was so disappointing to me. I'm going to give it 2.5 stars. I feel like I want to give it 2, but I'm going to give it 2.5 because I love Deanna Raybourn. This is a book about 4 women that work for this clandestine organization called the Museum, which is an elite organization of spies, or assassins is what they are. So they have been working at this museum for 40 years, but now their tactics are considered old school and they don't really want these women there anymore because they're in a generation that uses more technology and that's not these women's strong suit. So they are forcing them into retirement. They send them on an all expenses paid cruise to celebrate their retirement. Are you kidding me? You work for an organization of assassins and you're really gonna fall for that? You're really gonna fall for that. That's stupid. That's stupid. That's dumb. It's silly goose behavior. You've been staying alive as an assassin for 40 years and you're gonna think, oh my God, they wanna send me on an all expense cruise. No, they don't. No, they don't. One of their own tries to kill them and they realize that the board, who is the head of the museum, has marked them for death. So now they have to go against the organization that they've worked for this whole time and against their peers of assassins to make it out alive. When I tell you that they don't make smart decisions. They really don't make smart decisions. And the decisions that they do make, that they pull off, how? Like that would not happen. Now here's the thing. I'm telling you, it's not a bad book, but the thing is, the best way I can put it, this would make a great movie. This would make a fantastic movie. I'm already picturing it in my head. We're casting Helen Mirren, obviously, oh the fuck. But this would make a great movie, but it does not have enough depth to sustain itself as a book. It doesn't. It's fine. I'm sorry. Listen, I love Deanna Raybourn. I'm going to read everything she writes. You can count on me for that. But this, it was just disappointing. The last book that I read for October is actually a book I finished yesterday for Weekend Ween, and that is The Weight of Blood by Tiffany D. Jackson. This was one of my most anticipated books of 2022 because I have personally loved Grown and Monday's Not Coming by the same author, and she is one of the only authors that I still read YA from because I just don't really care for YA. I just find it kind of immature, and Tiffany D. Jackson is built different. She is built different. Like her YA, it's not like, oh, the characters are 16, but they read like they're 30. No, they are teenagers. This is a young adult book, but she writes it in a way where it's not cringy. It's not difficult to read. It's very enticing. It's very dark, very, very dark. This is a Carrie retelling. If you have ever read Carrie or seen the movie Carrie, this is that exact story, but with a bunch of modern takes on it and with a bunch of topics of like systemic racism and classism and all these different things like piled on top of it. Like it's layers and layers and layers and layers. So basically you were following this girl, Maddie Washington, and she goes to this high school and she is the target of a lot of bullies, but she deals with it and puts her head down because she's dealing with some other issues that take precedent over that. One of which gets revealed when she is at track and it shockingly starts raining. And she's like, I know that I checked to make sure it wasn't gonna rain. It starts raining and it reveals her biggest secret, that she is biracial because her hair curls up and she spends so much of her life straightening it and passing as white, making sure that she can pass as white at the behest of her fanatical white father who is freaking crazy. And the town turns on her completely. Even before, when she was the subject of all these bullying, now it's like amped up so much, and a video goes viral of some of the things that these students are doing to bully her. And this is set in 2014, and the shit that these students are doing to Maddie is disgusting. And also, basically, the town wants to get wiped off the map for its racist roots. So they decide that they're gonna hold their first non-segregated prom because it's 2014 and every year previously there's been a black prom and a white prom. And they don't see any problem with that. And let me tell you, the conversation that is had about systemic racism by a teacher to this prom committee is so good. It's so good. It's so well thought out. Oh my God. But here's the thing. Maddie is hiding another secret from everybody. And it's a secret that's going to cost almost everybody in the town their lives. Oh my God. So good. And when I tell you, you're rooting for these people to die in the end, like you're rooting for it. You're like, I can't wait. I know half this town's going to die. And I'm sure they all deserved it, which is so messed up to say. Pretend I didn't just say that. Anyway, that's how I felt when I was reading it. And if you've read Carrie, this takes Carrie, in which I love. Carrie was where it started it all for Stephen King. And Carrie really was like the backbone of a lot of female horror stories and female empowerment, you know, and the good for her kind of stories. But this takes Carrie and it perfects every element. Like Tiffany D. Jackson took a story that was good, but was Stephen King's first work. He wrote it when he was like 20 years old. She takes all of those elements and she bumps them up, perfects them, and makes it a 5-star book. It's so fucking good. I absolutely love it. Like, okay, I need to stop talking. I really need to stop talking. But anyway, I've been talking for way too damn long. I loved it. 5 stars. Okay, we are going to end the video right around now. I read 25, 26 books in October, or technically like 15, 16, because we're counting the 10 books that I rolled over into the next month. But anyway, if you got this far into the video, what should you leave? You know what? You should leave the red heart because there is like a predominant red thing happening. And there's red along here, red under the dust jacket. These are red, this, here. Look at that. October was red. Okay, leave the red heart emoji if you've gotten this far into the video and you don't know what else to say. That would be amazing. If you want to follow me on Goodreads or Instagram or my Patreon, they are going to be linked down below, as well as links for a myriad of other things to help support this channel. And all of that being said, I hope, as always, that you are having an amazing day, evening, night, dusk, dawn, whatever it is you're having in whatever part of the world you are currently having it in. And I will see you in a video coming very soon. Bye.